If you have access to a retirement plan at work, like a 401k or a 403b, it's a terrific way to invest for the future and get money-saving tax advantages. Once you're enrolled, you elect a percentage or a flat amount of each paycheck that you want to contribute to your account. Some plans allow participants to take loans up to certain limits. This podcast will review the rules and the pros and cons of borrowing from your 401k or your 403b, whatever plan you have at work. You'll learn some downsides to avoid and tips for making wise decisions about your retirement funds. Welcome back. It's episode 920 of Money Girl. I'm Laura Adams, an award-winning author, spokesperson, speaker, and founder of The Money Stack. That's my Substack newsletter, and host of this podcast with over 44 million downloads. If you enjoy the free content we love creating for you here, please take a moment to rate and review the show in your podcast app. And I'd love to hear if you're enjoying the show or if it's helped you improve some aspect of your financial life. You can do that by leaving a review, calling 302-364-0308 to leave a voice message, or visiting lauradadams.com. That's my website. I have an email contact page there and information about my work, books, and courses. And that's also where you can sign up for the Money Stack, where you will automatically receive my Money Success Toolkit. That's a free gift. It includes the exact templates I use to manage money. All right, let's talk about 401k loans. A 401k or a 403b loan isn't technically a loan because there's no lender. You may have the ability to tap your account balance up to certain limits if you pay back borrowed amounts with interest and according to a set repayment schedule. While I know it might seem strange to repay yourself with interest when you borrow from your own 401k, but the purpose is to compensate yourself for lost time. Because when you withdraw money from a retirement account, your funds are not invested. They can't grow, and that could hurt your future financial security. So the first hurdle to taking a loan from your retirement account at work is that your retirement plan must allow it. If you work for a small company that offers a 401k, many may not provide loans because they require paperwork and time to administer. I used to do benefits for a small company years ago, and our 401k did not offer loans simply because it was a good bit of work to administer them. So, that's not unusual. But if you work for a large company, most do allow loans. And if you're not sure whether loans are allowed for your retirement plan, you can ask your benefits administrator or review the account's Summary Plan Description, or SPD. That's a document that you should receive every year. Note that IRA-based accounts like a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, a SEP IRA, or a simple IRA are prohibited from offering loans. So this is only going to be for those workplace plans like a 401k, 403b, 457, those that are offered in the workplace. So if you can take a 401k loan, the IRS places a limit on the amount you can borrow over your lifetime. However, your retirement plan could impose a lower limit. The maximum you can borrow from a workplace retirement plan is typically half your vested balance, up to $50,000. For example, let's say you have $60,000 vested. The maximum you could borrow is $30,000, or half. Let's say your vested 401k balance is $200,000. Well, in that case, the most you could borrow is $50,000. However, there may be an exception to the 50% rule if you have a small vested balance. For instance, you may be allowed to borrow up to $10,000, even if you have less than $20,000 vested. So again, it does come down to what's allowed for your plan. And you can even take multiple loans if the total doesn't exceed your allowable limit over your lifetime. Retirement account loans have an interest rate and term that's specified in the plan document. The repayment period is typically 5 years, but it could be longer if you use the funds to buy a home. You do have to make payments in equal amounts that include the principal and interest, and that does get deducted from your paycheck. So if you repay a 401k or a 403b loan on time, you won't owe any income taxes or penalties. However, if you don't repay it on time, your outstanding balance gets considered an early withdrawal if you're younger than age 59 and a half. So in that case, you would be subject to income tax plus an additional 10% early withdrawal penalty on the unpaid loan amount. So that means if you get fired from your job or you just choose to leave your company and you've got an outstanding 401k loan balance, it becomes an early withdrawal unless you repay it by your tax filing deadline. Again, if you can't repay the entire retirement loan balance on time, you're going to have to pay income tax plus the 10% penalty if you're younger than 59 and a half. And, that could be a really big amount. Once you leave an employer, you become ineligible to take a 401k loan, even if you have money remaining in your old retirement account. If you have a new employer that offers a retirement plan, you may be eligible to roll over your old 401k into the new retirement plan, which, may offer loans. Now, what if your workplace retirement plan doesn't allow loans, or maybe you need more than the allowable loan limit? Well, in that case, you may be eligible for a hardship withdrawal, and this would be before age 59 and a half or before 55 if you decide to take early retirement at 55. Hardships are specific circumstances approved by the IRS, and they're very limited, so they include paying for college, buying a primary residence, avoiding foreclosure on a primary home, funeral expenses, and unreimbursed medical bills. Now, the downside of taking a 401k hardship withdrawal is that they're not tax-free. You do have to pay income taxes and a 10% early withdrawal penalty if you're younger than 59 and a half. Plus, you typically can't contribute to your retirement account for 6 months after taking a hardship withdrawal. So I just wanted to mention that in case, you're not familiar with the difference between a hardship withdrawal and a loan. So let's talk a little bit about the advantages of taking a 401k loan. We'll go through 5 of the main upsides. Number 1 is that you borrow from yourself. Since there's no 401k lender, you don't have to complete an application, verify your income, or submit years of income tax returns. However, you do have to sign a loan document with the institution that administers your retirement plan. You do have to agree to repay the funds at a set interest rate and term. And your 401k loans are usually available pretty quickly, like within a week. So when you need quick access to money and you know that you can repay it on time, a retirement plan loan can be a good option. The second benefit is that you don't need good credit. Since no lender has to approve you for a 401k loan, your credit score isn't a factor. If your retirement account allows loans, you can get one regardless of your credit rating, regardless of how much debt you have and your household income. The third benefit is that you pay a low interest rate. As I mentioned, the interest rate you have to pay on a 401k loan is specified in your plan document. You must pay it to your retirement account to help make up for the lost time in the markets. But the interest rate is typically much lower than what you'd pay for other types of debt, like using credit cards or taking out a personal loan. The fourth benefit is that you have a short repayment term. So unless you use a 401k loan for a home, you typically must repay it over 5 years. And having a relatively short repayment term can help keep your financial life on track with less debt and more retirement investments. And 5, you can spend the money any way you like. When you take a 401k loan, how you spend the money is entirely up to you. However, using it for a home may qualify you for a longer repayment term, such as up to 10 or even 15 years. So you want to let your benefits administrator or your retirement account custodian know if you plan to use any portion of a retirement loan to buy, build, or remodel your home. Okay, now we need to talk about the disadvantages of 401k loans. We'll go through 5 of those. Number 1 is you miss potential investment gains. The whole purpose of having a retirement account is to grow money for the future. Funds you withdraw for a loan are going to miss potential investment growth during the repayment period. Even if you repay a 401k loan on time, you could end up with less money in the account than if you hadn't taken a loan. The second downside is that your interest on the loan is not tax deductible. Funds you borrow from a workplace retirement plan are tax and penalty free if you follow all the rules, but they're not interest free. Now, another consideration is that, unlike the interest you pay on a mortgage or student loan, which may be partially or fully tax deductible, interest you pay on a retirement plan loan is never tax deductible. In other words, if you plan to use a 401k loan to buy a home or to pay for education, you could be better off getting a mortgage or a student loan. Those products allow you to deduct all or a portion of your interest from your taxable income, and that reduces your tax liability. The third downside is that you do have a lifetime limit. As I mentioned, if your retirement plan allows loans, the maximum you can borrow is $50,000 or 50% of your vested account balance, whichever is less. There could be a lower maximum depending on the rules for your plan. In addition, there may be a minimum loan amount, such as $1,000. Your vested balance is the money you own in your retirement account. So note that you're always 100% vested in your retirement contributions. However, your employer's contributions, like any profit sharing or matching contributions that they put in, are typically subject to a vesting schedule. So, that's when we talk about vesting, it's really applying to the money that's come from your employer. So check your plan document or ask your benefits administrator if you're unsure how much of your 401k balance is vested. You'll have to look for other lending options if you need to borrow more than the allowable limit. Fourth downside of a 401k loan is that you do have to repay it through payroll deductions. In general, you can't make a lump sum repayment for a 401k loan because payments are going to get automatically deducted from your paychecks. However, some plans do allow you to make monthly or quarterly loan payments or even prepay your balance ahead of time. So be sure you can afford a potential 401k loan payment before you take the loan. Missing a payment means that your entire outstanding balance would be subject to taxes and that hefty 10% early withdrawal penalty if you're younger than 59 and a half. And number 5, you could have an expensive penalty. If you take a 401k loan and something unforeseen happens, like you lose your job or, you have some other financial hardship, you could owe a large amount of taxes and penalties. Separating from your employer for any reason when you have a retirement plan loan means your entire balance is due by your tax filing deadline. As I mentioned, if you're younger than 59 and a half, any unpaid loan amounts are considered an early withdrawal, and that means they're subject to income taxes plus a 10% penalty. So definitely be confident that your job is stable and that you plan on staying with your employer before taking a retirement account loan. When you need to borrow money, whether you should take a loan from your workplace retirement account depends on your financial circumstances and your plans for using the money. Some retirement accounts require approval from a spouse for loans over a certain amount, such as over $5,000. But if you've got a secure job, taking a 401k loan at a relatively low interest rate, like 5% or 6%, could be better than taking out a higher rate personal loan or using expensive credit cards. In addition to getting favorable terms when borrowing from a retirement plan for a primary home, there are special rules for active military personnel and employees who take a leave of absence. If your retirement plan offers help or guidance from an advisor, consider discussing your situation with them. Understanding the rules and thinking carefully about the pros and cons of a 401k loan are really important before tapping your retirement account. That's all for now. I'll talk to you soon. Until then, here's to living a richer life. Money Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast, and we've got a great team I want to thank. Steve Rickyberg audio engineers the show. Brannon Gachus is our director of podcast. Holly Hutchins is our digital operations specialist. Morgan Christensen is our advertising operations specialist. And Nathaniel Hoops is our marketing contractor.